The sun was bright that Friday afternoon as Vanessa Richardson walked toward the glass doors of First National Bank. The sidewalk was busy with people rushing to finish their errands before the weekend, but Vanessa moved at her own pace, checking her phone one last time before tucking it into her pocket. She had just come from a casual lunch meeting and hadn't bothered to change out of her comfortable jeans and simple blue blouse. A light breeze ruffled her natural hair, which she had recently decided to wear proudly instead of straightening it for the corporate world. The heavy door swung open with a soft whoosh as Vanessa stepped into the cool air conditioning of the bank. The familiar smell of paper, cleaning supplies, and coffee from the small refreshment area greeted her. For a moment, she stood just inside, taking in the scene. The bank was packed today. Nearly every chair in the waiting area was filled, and the line snaked around the rope barriers, almost reaching the door. Tellers called out, "Next customer, please," every few minutes, but the line seemed to move at a snail's pace. Vanessa sighed quietly. She had hoped to get in and out quickly. The merger papers for Horizon Technologies were waiting on her desk for final review, and she had back-to-back meetings scheduled for the afternoon. But this banking matter couldn't wait. The merger would transfer millions of dollars through this very bank, and she needed to ensure everything was properly arranged. She joined the back of the line, standing behind an older woman clutching a deposit slip. The woman gave Vanessa a friendly nod, which she returned with a warm smile. Nearby, a young father tried to keep his two small children entertained, offering them mints from the counter and playing a quiet game of I Spy. The children giggled, their laughter a pleasant contrast to the serious business taking place around them. As the line inched forward, Vanessa observed the bank employees. 4 tellers worked the counter today, each with a different style of handling customers. The young woman at Station 1 was chatty, making small talk with everyone. The older man at Station 2 worked silently but efficiently. The woman at 3 seemed new, double-checking everything with a supervisor. And then there was Station 4. A man in his 30s, wearing a crisply ironed shirt and tie, who seemed to sort customers into categories of importance before he even spoke to them. 15 minutes passed. Vanessa shifted her weight from one foot to the other. She had been standing so long that her comfortable flats no longer felt so comfortable. She could have called ahead for an appointment with the manager, but between the emergency board meeting this morning and the lunch with investors, there simply hadn't been time. Being a CEO didn't mean she could control the clock. The security guard near the door nodded respectfully as their eyes met. Vanessa had always believed in treating everyone with the same respect, from cleaning staff to fellow executives. It was a lesson her grandmother had taught her, working 2 jobs to put Vanessa through college. Your position doesn't make you important. How you treat others does. 20 minutes now. The line had moved enough that Vanessa could see the large wall clock behind the counter. 2:35 p.m. Her next meeting was at 4 o'clock, cutting things close. She pulled out her phone briefly to check if any urgent messages had come through. The screen showed 3 new emails, all marked important, but they would have to wait. The young father in front of her was now at Station 3, the trainee teller looking nervously at his complex transaction. Vanessa would be next. She rehearsed her request in her mind, planning how to explain her needs clearly and efficiently. When the teller at Station 4 called "Next customer," Vanessa stepped forward, unaware that this ordinary banking errand was about to become anything but ordinary. She approached the counter with the quiet confidence that had helped her climb the corporate ladder despite all obstacles, her mind still on the merger details and after. Vanessa approached Station 4 with her bank card already in hand. The name tag on the teller's crisp blue shirt read Michael Harmon. He didn't look up immediately, finishing something on his computer before finally raising his eyes to meet hers. "How can I help you today?" Michael asked, his tone already suggesting he had better things to do. His eyes quickly scanned her casual outfit, the jeans, the simple blouse, the practical flats, and something in his expression shifted. "Good afternoon," Vanessa said with a polite smile. "I need to discuss a business transaction that will be happening soon. It involves transferring several accounts and setting up new ones for a company merger." Michael's eyebrows rose slightly. "A company merger?" he repeated, his voice carrying a hint of disbelief. "And what company would that be?" "Horizon Technologies," Vanessa replied calmly, sliding her ID and business card across the counter. I'm the CEO, and we're finalizing a merger next week that involves significant banking arrangements. Michael barely glanced at her identification before pushing it back toward her. Right, he said, drawing out the word. And how much money are we talking about here? The initial transfer will be around 15 million, with follow-up transactions that could reach over 100 million in the coming months, Vanessa explained, keeping her voice level despite noticing his growing skepticism. A small laugh escaped Michael's lips. That's quite a sum, he said, leaning back in his chair. And you just walked in without an appointment for this significant transaction. The woman at the next teller station glanced over, clearly overhearing the conversation. Vanessa noticed her uncomfortable expression but focused on Michael. I understand it's unusual, Vanessa acknowledged. My schedule today didn't allow for a formal appointment, but these arrangements need to be in place by Monday morning. Michael folded his arms across his chest. Look, ma'am, he said, emphasizing the word in a way that felt patronizing. For transactions of that nature, you really should be working with our wealth management department. They handle the premium customers. I'm aware of that, Vanessa replied. I was hoping you could connect me with someone from that department today. Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. Those departments work by appointment only, for special clients. He drummed his fingers on the counter. Perhaps I could suggest something more appropriate for your situation. A few people in line had begun to notice the exchange. Vanessa could feel their eyes on her back, but she maintained her composure. I'm not sure I understand what you mean by appropriate for my situation, she said, her voice still calm, but with a new edge to it. Michael sighed dramatically. Listen, there's a check cashing place down the street that might be better suited for your needs. We're a premium financial institution, and our wealth management services are for verified high net worth individuals. The bank had grown quieter. Even the young father with his children had stopped their game to watch what was happening. The security guard shifted uncomfortably near the door. Are you suggesting I go elsewhere based on what exactly? Vanessa asked, her question hanging in the air between them. Based on reality, Michael replied with a condescending smile. $1 million business transactions don't just walk in wearing jeans. Now, if you'd like to open a basic checking account, I'd be happy to help with that. We have several options with reasonable minimum balances. Vanessa took a deep breath. 20 years of climbing the corporate ladder had taught her to recognize moments like this. The subtle and not so subtle ways people made assumptions about her capabilities, her wealth, her position. She had learned long ago that losing her temper wouldn't help. I'd like to speak with your manager, please, she said quietly. Michael's smile tightened. My manager is very busy with actual high-value clients today. Perhaps if you'd like to leave your contact information, someone could call you next week to set up an appointment. He slid a basic account application across the counter, pointedly ignoring her request. This might be a good place to start building a banking relationship with us, he added. The minimum deposit is only $100. The tension in the air was palpable now. Several other bank employees had noticed what was happening, but no one stepped in. Vanessa stood straight, her hand resting lightly on the counter, her eyes fixed steadily on Michael's face. I'll ask one more time, she said, her voice carrying clear. Michael's face hardened as he picked up the phone on his desk. He punched in a number without taking his eyes off Vanessa, his finger jabbing the buttons with unnecessary force. The entire bank lobby seemed to be watching now, conversations quieting to murmurs as people sensed the tension. Hey, Eleanor, Michael said into the phone, his voice suddenly louder than necessary. I've got a situation up front. A woman is insisting on speaking with you about her. He paused, looking Vanessa up and down. Large business transaction, says she's some kind of CEO. The way he emphasized the word made it clear he didn't believe her. Vanessa stood perfectly still, her expression calm despite the heat rising in her cheeks. She had been in situations like this before, too many times to count. The first time she walked into a board meeting as the only black woman. The time a store security guard followed her through an expensive shop. The countless moments of having to prove she belonged in spaces others entered without question. Michael hung up the phone with a smug smile. The branch manager will be with you shortly. She's finishing up with an important client. He emphasized the word important with a slight nod, as if to suggest Vanessa didn't qualify for that description. An older woman waiting in line behind Vanessa shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps I should go to another teller, she whispered to her husband, loud enough for several people to hear. No need to whisper, ma'am, Michael called out, his voice carrying across the lobby. We'll sort this out quickly. Some folks just don't understand how banking works at this level. He gave a theatrical sigh. It happens in certain communities where financial education is lacking. The woman's husband looked embarrassed and stared at the floor. A young teller at the next station glanced over with a troubled expression, but quickly looked away when Michael caught her eye. While we wait, Michael continued, sliding a pamphlet across the counter, here's some information about our basic checking accounts. They have daily withdrawal limits that might be more appropriate for your needs. He raised his voice slightly, and very reasonable monthly fees. Every word was carefully constructed to humiliate, to suggest that Vanessa was out of her depth, that she couldn't possibly have the money or position she claimed. The bank had grown so quiet that his words seemed to echo against the marble floors and high ceilings. Vanessa picked up the pamphlet without opening it. 20 years of breaking glass ceilings had taught her that reacting emotionally would only reinforce the stereotypes people like Michael held. Instead, she thought of her grandmother's words, "Your dignity isn't given by others. It's held inside you where no one can take it away." I see, she said quietly. And do you typically direct all your customers to these basic accounts before reviewing their financial information? Michael's smile faltered for just a moment. Well, we try to guide customers to the appropriate services based on our assessment. And how exactly do you make that assessment? Vanessa asked, her voice level but firm. Before Michael could answer, a well-dressed woman in her 50s emerged from a hallway behind the teller stations. She moved with the confident stride of someone in charge, her eyes scanning the unusual quiet of the normally busy bank. Michael, what's going on? She asked, approaching the counter. Her name tag identified her as Eleanor Wells, branch manager. Michael straightened his tie. This woman claimed she needs to discuss a major business transaction, he explained, his tone making it clear what he thought of the claim. Something about being the CEO of a tech company and moving millions of dollars. He gave Eleanor a knowing look, as if they shared an inside joke. Eleanor turned to Vanessa with a practiced customer service smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I'm Eleanor Wells, the branch manager. I understand there's some confusion about our services. Vanessa met her gaze steadily. There's no confusion on my part, Ms. Wells. I came in today to discuss the banking arrangements for Horizon Technologies' upcoming merger, which will involve significant transactions through this bank. I've been told by your teller that I should consider a check cashing service down the street instead. Eleanor's smile remained fixed, but her eyes darted to Michael and back. Behind her, several customers had abandoned any pretense of not listening, openly watching the drama unfold. I see, Eleanor said carefully. Perhaps we should... Actually, Vanessa said calmly, I'd prefer to finish our conversation here, since it began here. She was tired of being ushered away, of having uncomfortable truths hidden behind closed doors. Too often in her career, she had watched discrimination happen in public and be apologized for in private. Eleanor's smile tightened around the edges. She glanced around at the customers who were openly watching now, their banking errands temporarily forgotten. Even the security guard by the door had shifted position to observe the situation better. I really think we'd be more comfortable discussing your concerns in my office, Eleanor insisted, her voice honeyed but firm. She gave Michael a quick look that clearly said, handle this. Michael cleared his throat. Ms. Wells is very busy today with scheduled appointments. She's making special time for you, so perhaps you could cooperate. His tone suggested he was speaking to a difficult child rather than a grown woman. Vanessa noticed a young couple at the next teller station being helped quickly and efficiently. The teller smiled genuinely at them as she processed their mortgage pre-approval application. The contrast was striking. I understand you're busy, Vanessa replied, but I've already waited 20 minutes in line only to be told I should go to a check cashing store. I'd like to know if that's the bank's official policy for all new clients, or if there was something specific about me that prompted that suggestion. Eleanor's eyes widened slightly. She shot Michael a sharper look now. I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding. Michael is one of our most experienced tellers. He was probably trying to direct you to the right department for your needs. My needs, Vanessa repeated thoughtfully. And how exactly did Michael determine what my needs were? I stated clearly that I needed to discuss a multi-million-dollar business transaction. Yet somehow, he decided I needed basic checking account information instead. The bank lobby had grown so quiet that the soft wire of the air conditioning seemed loud. A woman in line whispered something to her friend. An older man watching from the waiting area frowned deeply, his eyes moving between Vanessa and the bank employees. Eleanor's professional mask slipped slightly. Look, we can't just take people at their word when they walk in claiming to be handling millions of dollars. We have protocols. I understand protocols, Vanessa said. What I don't understand is why those protocols weren't applied equally. I watched several people come in after me and receive respectful service without their claims being questioned. Michael jumped in, clearly frustrated. Those people were clearly here for normal banking services appropriate to their situation. Their situation, Vanessa echoed. And what exactly is my situation, Michael? The air felt charged now. A teller from another station had stopped working entirely to watch. The young couple who had just finished their transaction lingered by the door, unwilling to miss what happened next. Eleanor placed a hand on Michael's arm, signaling him to be quiet. Ms. I'm sorry, I didn't catch your name. Richardson, Vanessa supplied. Vanessa Richardson. Ms. Richardson, Eleanor continued, I apologize if you felt unwelcome. That's certainly not our intention. Perhaps if you had made an appointment or brought some documentation about your company, we could have served you better. Vanessa reached into her purse and pulled out her wallet. The entire bank seemed to lean forward collectively, waiting. She removed a business card and placed it on the counter. My documentation, she said simply. Eleanor picked up the card automatically, barely glancing at it as she continued speaking. We value all our customers, Ms. Richardson, but for special services, we do need to verify. Her words cut off abruptly as her eyes finally focused on the card in her hand. The color drained from her face. Is there a problem? Vanessa asked quietly. Eleanor read the card again, her lips moving slightly as she took in the embossed letters. Vanessa Richardson, Chief Executive Officer, Horizon Technologies. Horizon Technologies, Eleanor repeated. Michael leaned over to look at the card, confusion crossing his face. What's Horizon Technologies? Eleanor stared at him in disbelief. Only the company that's been all over the financial news for the past month. The one finalizing a billion-dollar merger next week. She turned back to Vanessa, her professional smile returning with new warmth. Ms. Richardson, I had no idea. Please, won't you come to my office now? I can assure you we can accommodate all your banking needs. The whispers around the bank grew louder. Someone in line was looking up Horizon Technologies on their phone, showing the screen to the person next to them. The mood had shifted dramatically. Vanessa stood perfectly still, her expression unchanged. Before we continue, Ms. Wells, I have one question. Eleanor's face flushed as she struggled to find the right words. The business card seemed to burn in her hand. She stammered, looking to Michael for help, but he was staring at the card with his mouth slightly open. Let me answer that for you, Vanessa said, her voice calm but carrying clearly through the now silent bank. You wouldn't have, because you didn't bother to ask. Neither did your teller. You both made assumptions based on what you saw, not who I am. A phone began ringing somewhere in the back office, the sound jarring in the tense atmosphere. No one moved to answer it. Ms. Richardson, Eleanor began again, her voice dropping to a hushed, urgent tone. Please understand, we see hundreds of customers every day. We can't possibly know who each person is. Vanessa finished for her. I agree. That's exactly why banking protocols should be applied equally to everyone who walks through those doors. The young couple who had lingered by the exit were now openly recording the exchange on their phones. The man whispered something to the woman, who nodded and typed quickly on her screen. Michael's face had gone from pale to red. How was I supposed to know? He blurted out, "You didn't say who you were. You just walked up in jeans and expected special treatment." Elena shot him a warning look, but it was too late. His words hung in the air, confirming exactly what Vanessa had been pointing out. "I didn't expect special treatment," Vanessa replied. "I expected equal treatment. The same courtesy and respect you showed to others, nothing more." An older man in the waiting area stood up and began to clap slowly. A few others joined in, their applause spreading like ripples in a pond. Eleanor looked around in dismay, seeming to fully grasp the public relations disaster unfolding in her lobby. "Ms. Richardson," she said urgently, "please, let's continue this in my office. I promise you'll have my full attention and the highest level of service our bank offers." As if on cue, the bank's glass doors swung open and a tall man in an expensive suit rushed in, looking anxious and out of breath. His eyes scanned the room until they landed on Eleanor. "Eleanor," he called, striding toward them. "I'd got your message about." He stopped short when he saw Vanessa, recognition dawning immediately on his face. "Ms. Richardson. I'm Thomas Wong, Regional Director for First National. We've been hoping to work with Horizon Technologies for months." More whispers spread through the crowd. Someone in line was showing others something on their phone, a news article, perhaps, or Vanessa's company profile. The mood in the bank had transformed completely. "Mr. Wong," Vanessa acknowledged with a slight nod. "I came in today to discuss banking arrangements for our merger next week. Your bank was recommended to me for handling the transactions." Thomas's face lit up like a child on Christmas morning. "We would be honored to handle those arrangements for you, Ms. Richardson. Our bank has extensive experience with mergers and acquisitions of this scale." He glanced nervously at Eleanor, clearly sensing the tension. "Is everything all right here?" "Mr. Wong," Vanessa said, "I was just explaining to your colleagues that I came in today to discuss transferring our corporate accounts to your bank, accounts worth over $50 million, as well as my personal accounts. I was told by this teller that I might be more comfortable at the check cashing store down the street." Thomas's smile froze on his face. He turned slowly to look at Michael, who seemed to be trying to make himself invisible behind his computer screen. "He what?" Thomas asked, his voice dangerously quiet. "He also suggested I start with a basic checking account with reasonable minimum balances," Vanessa continued, "since million-dollar transactions don't walk in wearing jeans." The lobby had grown so quiet you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Thomas closed his eyes briefly, as if in physical pain. "Ms. Richardson," he said when he opened them again, "on behalf of First National Bank, I'd offer my deepest and most sincere apologies. This is absolutely not how we conduct business, nor is it reflective of our values as an institution." Eleanor nodded vigorously beside him. "Absolutely not," she echoed. "Michael is new to our branch and clearly needs additional training." "I've been here for 6 years," Michael mumbled, then immediately regretted speaking when Thomas shot him a withering look. "Ms. Richardson," Thomas continued, "if you would allow us, we would still very much like to earn your business." Vanessa looked around the bank, at the customers watching with interest, at the tellers who had stopped working, at Michael shrinking behind his counter, at Eleanor and Thomas standing anxiously before her. She had been in this position before, the moment when power. "I'll still need to discuss those banking arrangements," Vanessa said finally, her voice level. "But first, I'd like a glass of water, if that's possible." Thomas snapped to attention. "Of course, Ms. Richardson. Eleanor, would you please show Ms. Richardson to your office while I get her some water? No, better yet." He turned to a young teller who had been watching the scene unfold. "Lisa, would you please bring a bottle of water to Eleanor's office right away? And some coffee if Ms. Richardson prefers." As if a spell had been broken, everyone suddenly began moving at once. Eleanor gestured toward the hallway behind the teller counters, her smile now genuine and eager. "Right this way, Ms. Richardson. My office is much more comfortable." Vanessa picked up her business card from the counter, sliding it back into her wallet. She glanced at Michael, who was staring fixably at his computer screen, his ears burning red. Without a word to him, she followed Eleanor down the hallway, aware of the eyes of every customer and employee tracking her movement. Eleanor's office was spacious, with large windows overlooking the street and comfortable leather chairs. Family photos lined one bookshelf, while professional certificates and awards covered another wall. Eleanor rushed to clear some papers from the chairs. "Please, make yourself comfortable," she said, her voice higher than normal. "I am so terribly sorry about what happened out there. I want you to know that's not who we are as an institution." Vanessa took a seat, placing her purse beside her. "And yet it happened in your institution, under your management." Eleanor winced. "Yes, you're absolutely right. There's no excuse." She took a deep breath. "I should have intervened sooner. I heard some of what Michael was saying, but I didn't believe it was as bad as it was." Vanessa finished for her. Eleanor nodded miserably. "Something like that." She sat down behind her desk, then immediately stood up again as Lisa arrived with a tray holding water, coffee, and a small plate of cookies. "Thank you, Lisa," Eleanor said. The young teller set down the tray and gave Vanessa an apologetic smile before leaving. Thomas appeared in the doorway seconds later, slightly out of breath. "Ms. Richardson, I've just been on the phone with our CEO, David Chen. He sends his personal apologies and would like to speak with you directly when you have a moment." "Your CEO knows who I am?" Vanessa asked, raising an eyebrow. Thomas nodded eagerly. "Of course, the Horizon Technologies merger has been major news in financial circles. Mr. Chen actually mentioned last week that he hoped we might be able to work with your company in the future." "And yet no one at this branch recognized my name when I mentioned it," Vanessa observed, taking a sip of water. Thomas and Eleanor exchanged uncomfortable glances. "That's an unfortunate oversight we need to address in our staff training," Thomas admitted. Outside the office, they could hear movement and hushed conversations. Through the glass wall facing the lobby, Vanessa could see Michael being led to the back area by a stern-looking woman from HR. "What will happen to him?" Vanessa asked, nodding toward Michael. "He's been suspended pending review," Thomas explained quickly. "I can assure you we have zero tolerance for discriminatory behavior. There will be consequences." Vanessa nodded thoughtfully. "And what about the broader issue? Because Michael isn't the only banker who makes assumptions based on appearance. He's just the one who got caught today." Eleanor and Thomas fell silent, looking genuinely troubled. After a moment, Thomas spoke. "You're right, Ms. Richardson. This is likely a systemic issue that requires systemic solutions. What would you suggest?" Before Vanessa could answer, a knock came at the door. A professional-looking woman with glasses peered in. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, "but there are reporters in the lobby asking to speak with management. Apparently someone posted a video online, and it's getting attention." Thomas closed his eyes briefly. "Tell them we'll issue a statement later today. No comments at this time." The woman nodded and disappeared. Thomas turned back to Vanessa with an apologetic smile. "Now, where were we?" "Oh yes, discussing your banking needs for the merger." "Actually," Vanessa said, "we were discussing something more important. How—" Thomas blinked, clearly expecting her to move on. "Right, of course. That's equally important." Eleanor leaned forward, her expression more genuine than it had been all day. "Ms. Richardson, if you're willing, I'd actually value your input on this. Today has been eye-opening." Vanessa looked between them, considering. After 20 years of fighting for her place in corporate America, she recognized an opportunity when she saw one, not just to complete her banking transaction, but to create meaningful change. 6 months had passed since that day at First National Bank. The summer heat had given way to autumn crispness, and the trees outside the bank's windows were dressed in bright orange and red. Vanessa pulled open the heavy glass door, feeling a strange mix of emotions as she stepped into the lobby. The bank looked different now. Not just the seasonal decorations or the new furniture, but something more fundamental had changed. The teller stations had been redesigned to be more open and welcoming. The walls, once bare except for bank advertisements, now displayed artwork from local artists of various backgrounds. But the biggest difference was in the people. "Good morning, Ms. Richardson," called the security guard, a woman named Diane who had started 3 months ago as part of the bank's expanded hiring initiative. Here for your meeting with Eleanor. Vanessa smiled and nodded. Just thought I'd stop by the teller line first. I have a deposit to make. She joined the short line, noticing how each customer was being greeted, with genuine smiles, eye contact, and the same respectful tone, regardless of their appearance or the transaction they were conducting. When she reached the front, she found herself facing a young man whose name tag read Anthony. "Good morning, how can I help you today?" he asked warmly. Vanessa handed him her check and deposit slip. Just a simple deposit today. Anthony processed her transaction with professional efficiency. There was no hint of judgment in his manner, no assumptions made, just good service. "All set, Ms. Richardson. Would you like a receipt?" "Yes, please," she said, watching him closely. She wondered if he knew who she was, if the story of what had happened 6 months ago had been shared with new employees during their training. As if reading her thoughts, Anthony smiled slightly. "You know, we all watched your training video during orientation. It really opened my eyes to how little things we say and do can make customers feel unwelcome." So they did know. The video had been her idea, a frank discussion about what had happened that day, featuring Vanessa herself talking about the experience of being judged based on appearance. First National had turned it into the centerpiece of their new diversity training program. "I'm glad it was helpful," Vanessa said, taking her receipt. "It changed how I think about banking," Anthony said sincerely. "Thank you for that." As Vanessa made her way to Eleanor's office, she passed the spot where she had stood that day, feeling the sting of Michael's condescension. She had learned later that he'd been let go from the bank. Part of her had felt bad about that, but she reminded herself that actions had consequences. Besides, according to Eleanor, he'd found another position at a smaller bank, after completing a diversity awareness course. Eleanor was waiting at her office door, no longer the nervous manager scrambling to fix a PR disaster, but a confident woman who had turned that crisis into an opportunity for genuine change. "Vanessa, right on time as always," she said, gesturing toward the chairs. "The community banking team is ready when you are." The meeting had been scheduled to discuss the progress of the financial literacy program that Horizon Technologies and First National had launched together in underserved neighborhoods. The program had been Vanessa's condition for keeping her company's accounts at the bank, not just apologies and training videos, but real investment in the community. "Before we start," Eleanor said, closing her door, "I wanted you to know that our customer satisfaction scores have gone up 30% since implementing the changes you suggested. And applications from diverse candidates have doubled." Vanessa nodded, pleased but not surprised. When people feel respected, everyone benefits. The regional director still gets nervous whenever he sees someone in casual clothes walk in and ask to speak with management, Eleanor said with a small laugh. "He's learned his lesson the hard way." A knock at the door announced the arrival of the community banking team, a diverse group of professionals who handled the financial literacy program. Among them was Lisa, the young teller who had brought Vanessa water that day, now promoted to program coordinator. As they settled in to begin the meeting, Vanessa glanced out the window at the people walking into the bank, people of all backgrounds, dressed in everything from business suits to work uniforms to casual wear. Each one deserving of respect. Each one being greeted with it. Sometimes change came slowly in this world, painfully so. But sometimes it took just one moment, one person standing their ground, refusing to be dismissed, to start a transformation. The bank would never be perfect. No institution was. But it was better today than it had